Welcome to It's Settled with Stefanie L's podcast. My name is Stefanie Lyles. My guest today is Blake Lyles, and he happens to be married to me. So, Blake, you want to say hi?
What's up?
Thanks for being here today.
No problem.
In our master bedroom closet with the door shut. This is like one of the only places in our house that we can get away from the kids and the dogs.
This is true.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I think was so neat when I first met you. What?
We're testing, right?
No, we're not testing. We're recording.
But I thought we were testing this stuff.
No, we're recording.
I know that, but aren't we going to test this, make sure it sounds right?
But it does.
Okay.
This is how content is created.
Okay.
Okay? And this is also called the Stefanie Lyles podcast.
Okay.
So, one of the things that I thought was really neat when I first met you is, I grew up in Arkansas and you grew up in South Carolina. But I feel like we both had a very similar upbringing. Like, really rural, a lot of older people who had older traditions and ways of life, like the places that we went to church. So even though you were over on the East Coast and I'm here kind of in the swampy Delta Ozark mountain regions and that's two separate regions of Arkansas, guys, by the way, and I know that. But I got to thinking, like, there's so many things that I thought was true as a kid that I grew up and realized were not true.
As in what? I don't think my mic is, but I guess it is.
Yeah, it is. Well, okay, so my dad's brother, who is Rudy Powell, he is a Vietnam veteran. And so when I was a little kid, I don't know, probably 7 or 8, Uncle Rudy told me that he caught a hoop snake when he was in Vietnam. And he brought that hoop snake home to my grandparents' house. And what happened is it crawled underneath their front porch and grew and had caused the crack in that porch. So the whole time, like, for years, I'm thinking there is a legit hoop snake that is stuck underneath my grandparents' porch and it has cracked their foundation.
Never heard of a hoop snake.
Well, let me tell you what a hoop snake is.
Okay.
It's like a big tropical snake that lived in the Vietnam jungles. And the snake would put its tail in its mouth. And so it would shape itself into like a hula hoop circle and roll through the jungle.
Okay. You're making this up.
I'm not making this up. So, no, Uncle
Yeah.
Rudy really told me this.
Well, Uncle Rudy made it up.
Exactly. But I believed him.
Okay.
So you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I went into adolescence asking my high school biology teacher where we could find hoop snakes in the wild.
Nice.
Yeah. So, what about, anything that you grew up thinking was like a fact and then you found out later was not?
There was a bunch of stuff. As far as being weird, I guess my uncle would come to my dad's to speak to him when I was a kid and to get me out of his hair.
So right here, Blake accidentally muted his microphone, but what he was saying is they would catch grasshoppers and his dad's friend, I think, would bite the head off of them for these boys just so that they would leave them alone. Now, hang on. Was he really biting the head off these grasshoppers, or was there some kind of optical illusion?
No, he was biting them off and eating it.
And he was doing this for the sole purpose of distracting you long enough to keep you out of him and your dad's hair.
Correct. 100%.
Were these like katydid grasshoppers, or
They're
were
just regular grasshoppers I find in the yard?
I mean,
And
so
I'd get my cousin, if I'd say, man, help me find this grasshopper, and Ricky's going to bite its head off, and then we'd take it to him, and he'd bite his head off and eat it.
and what did your cousin say? Did he question why this was like going down? Why y'all?
No, he just wanted to find a grasshopper to see somebody bite his head off and eat it, like I did.
Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
So, I grew up in a very remote part of north central Arkansas. And when I was probably 11, my mom's sister, Aunt Marcia, had gotten married to one of her husbands. I think that might have been her second husband. And they had just put a beautiful double wide trailer on a couple acres. I mean, it was gorgeous. And so we're all sitting around at my grandparents' one evening, and the extended family's all sitting around, and I don't know how this came up, but somebody had the great idea that we were going to drive over to Aunt Marcia's in the middle of the night and Shivaree her and her new husband. Do you know what a Shivaree is?
No.
Yeah, well, I didn't either. But apparently it's like a tradition from the Irish immigrants. And so the settlers in Appalachia and on westward, if you had a newlywed couple, the whole community would get together and go and harass them in the middle of the night until they came outside. And then they would make them do crazy stuff. Like my grandma said, when her and my grandpa got married, and this had to have been like in the 40s, they came, threw potatoes on their roof, woke them up, and then when they came outside, they made Grandma push Grandpa down the road in a wheelbarrow. And she had no shoes on and a nightgown. So we all load up, like my grandpa, my grandma, my other aunt, uncle, my parents, and we drive like 20 miles through the dark to go harass Aunt Marcia and her husband at the time. And so my grandpa caused a diversion, and he went to the house and told them, I need to tell you guys something really important. So he took them out driving around in the country, and he made sure that he got their door unlocked. He made sure he was the last one out, left the door unlocked. And we proceeded to completely ransack that brand new double wide trailer. We took all of Tom's guns and hid them. And it was like, I don't know, it was a couple weeks before Christmas. We took all of the Christmas presents from underneath the Christmas tree and hid them. And then my mom took lipstick and wrote on the mirror, Merry Christmas, suckers.
There's a difference in that and where I grew up. If you did that where I grew up, you would get shot.
See, that's what I'm kind of thinking. Like, even this day and age, you try to Shivaree somebody, you are going to get arrested.
Well, I mean, I grew up with, you had Waynes, you had Lucille's, you had Earl's, you had Sambo's. I had 4 or 5 bars within, I could throw a baseball and hit all of them. So, it was good. I mean, as a kid, I got to shoot pool. Everybody was cool to me and stuff like that. But
did you ever see any like Roadhouse action, like Patrick Swayze Roadhouse action?
Yeah, it would happen.
I mean, did they have the guys with mullets and their sleeves rolled up with a cigarette pack stuck in their sleeve?
Trans Ams, the whole deal.
So basically, like today's youth, mullets and Trans Ams.
Nothing like today's youth.
Okay.
But I get what you're saying.
Yeah. So, did you drink when you were in these bars as a child?
Well, there was one time a lady that was working in there. I was probably 10 or 11. I said, let me try that beer. And she said, no. I said, well, let me try that beer. She said, all right, but you better not tell your dad or he'll kill me. And she gave me a sip of an old Budweiser, and it was the worst thing I'd ever tasted in my life.
And I really hope your dad doesn't listen to this.
Yeah.
Because she's going to get in big trouble.
Right, true.
Yeah. And that's kind of like crossing a line, though. Giving somebody else's kid a drink of beer. But that's just how times are. Because people didn't really see a sip of beer is not a big deal. Like, my little brother loved beer from the time he was like an infant. You know, he just liked the smell of it.
He still smells like it.
Yeah. Yeah, he really... That and a little bit of goat.
Mm-hmm.
So, did you guys have the legend of snipe hunting where
Yes.
you grew up in South Carolina?
Yes, we did.
So, did you ever go?
Never went. Never fell for it.
But see, like, I always had invitations to go for a long time. And my grandpa would always, he'd always suggest it. We're going to go snipe hunting. Well, then I would get excited because I thought a snipe was like some kind of a rare bird that you could only hunt at night. So it took years for somebody to finally tell me, you're not missing anything because they're going to abandon you in the woods.
Yeah. Falls in the same category as the hoop snake.
If your distinguished Vietnam veteran of an uncle told you about a hoop snake from Vietnam, would you question it?
Probably not.
No, you wouldn't.
Probably not.
Because you'd be like, this man braved the forests and the jungles of Vietnam. I'm not questioning his possession of a hoop snake.
This is true.
Yeah. So there's so many things though that like I feel like our kids are missing out on that older generation with getting to hear these stories and experience these things. Because some of that stuff, like, man, people would call child protective services on you these days if you wanted to take your kids snipe hunting.
Yeah.
Just left them in the woods.
That's one thing about my childhood that I'm thankful for. I'm not saying everything was right. I'm not saying all this stuff should have been done, but I was loaded with stories from old men, and we just there's a fear that's going away, for sure.
Mm-hmm. I think that's another reason that it's really important that we ask people questions. Because some of these things can spark memories in these old stories. And I also read something really interesting that said, like, we can inherit our ancestors' memories in our DNA. So all you got to do is ask the questions and you can potentially unlock hoop snake stories and other legends from your family history.
Yeah, I don't know about that. It's
Mm-hmm.
a little much. It's a little
Yeah.
much. But I've got good ones. I mean, you've got good stories. I guess it's just our job to leave our kids good ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what do you think is the weirdest thing, tradition-wise, since you are from South Carolina and you live in Arkansas now? Like, what's something that we do here or eat here that you never had experienced or you think might be kind of weird or something?
The weirdest thing about Arkansas, and I've yet to get an explanation, and supposedly it's like one of the biggest rice capitals of the world, or whatever, of the country. But there's never a meal that you eat here where there's rice involved in it. Nobody ever cooks rice. I never ate a meal in South Carolina that didn't have rice.
Yeah, and this is true, y'all, because the times that I've been around Blake's family or we went back to South Carolina, like, we'll have mashed potatoes as a side. They have rice as a side with everything. And that's a valid point because we're, like, right down the road from Stuttgart. I mean, Rice Land.
Mm-hmm, that's ridiculous.
It's our neighbor.
Never understood it.
Yeah. So something that I really like about South Carolina that we don't have in Arkansas is palm trees.
Yeah.
Yeah. And shagging.
Shagging is cool.
The coolest thing. Yeah. I mean, and if you don't know what shagging is, it's this kind of dance where they're sliding their feet around on the hardwood floor, and it's kind of like 50s, 60s type stuff.
Beach music.
Yeah. So you can go to this place in Myrtle Beach called Fat Harold's.
Mm-hmm.
And we did that a couple summers ago with some of Blake's friends from South Carolina. And they basically offered me a job to stay there and be a professional shagger.
Yeah, in the dancing sense.
Yeah. That's a joke because I'm very, I don't have much coordination. So, next question, and I guess this will be kind of the final one. I know that this makes you uncomfortable to talk into a microphone and have me ask you questions like this.
I wasn't ready for it, but
yeah.
I'm good.
So, what do you think is the ideal height to mow your grass on in the setting?
2 3/4.
You think so?
Hands down.
Got it. Okay. Thanks for listening to It's Settled with Stefanie L.